Hello friends, it's Irina here again. Today we're going to talk about a question that sooner or later comes up for almost everyone who wants to raise poultry, which is more profitable for a small farm, chickens or turkeys? At first glance, the answer seems obvious. Chickens are easier to keep, require less space, and start producing earlier. But turkeys grow much larger and provide significantly more meat from a single bird. So simply comparing feed prices doesn't tell the whole story. To understand which bird is actually more profitable, we need to consider several factors: feed cost, growing period, space requirements, bird health, and final production yield. And here's the interesting part. What is more profitable on one farm may not be more profitable on another. Scientific literature and poultry production guidelines provide standard recommendations and calculations, but real-life keeping conditions can significantly change the result. So let's compare chickens and turkeys not by just one factor, but by the entire production process from buying the birds to getting the final product. And we'll start with the most obvious factor: how much feed the bird will need throughout the entire growing period. Because this is where one of the biggest differences between chickens and turkeys begins. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything interesting. There's still plenty of interesting content ahead. Let's start with feed. It is usually one of the largest expenses in poultry production. And the first thing to understand is this: we should not compare only how much feed a bird eats, but how much product we get from that feed. In poultry production, this is measured by feed conversion ratio, or FVCR. It shows how much feed is needed to produce 1 unit of weight gain. The lower this number is, the more efficiently the bird uses feed. For example, in one study, broilers had a feed conversion ratio of about 1.75, meaning approximately 1.75 kilograms of feed per kilogram of weight gain. Turkeys have a longer growing period, so total feed consumption increases as they grow. So a larger turkey carcass does not necessarily mean lower profitability. What matters is how much the feed costs and how much meat it ultimately produces. For your own farm, the best approach is to keep simple records: feed, bird weight, and costs. Then your comparison will be based not on impressions, but on your actual numbers. Now let's look at the second factor, time. And this is where the difference between chickens and turkeys becomes especially noticeable. With modern meat broilers, market weight can be reached in about 6 weeks. Turkeys have a much longer growing cycle, depending on the type of bird and the desired market weight, roughly 14 to 22 weeks. This means chickens allow you to recover your investment much faster and make room for the next batch of birds. Turkeys work on a different model. A longer growing period gives you a much larger bird. For example, large commercial turkeys can continue growing actively beyond 16 weeks, and some types are raised to 20-24 weeks. So the question is no longer simply, which bird grows faster? The right question is, what do I need the bird for? If you want meat quickly and several production cycles per season, the broiler has the advantage. If your main goal is a much larger carcass from one bird and you are willing to wait longer, the turkey becomes more attractive. And this is an important conclusion: chickens are about faster turnover, while turkeys are about more product from one bird. Now let's talk about eggs. And here we need to compare chickens and turkeys carefully, because chickens have different production types. There are specialized laying strains that can start laying at around 4-5 months. There are also dual-purpose breeds and large meat breeds, such as the Jersey Giant, which also produce eggs. So chickens can be chosen for meat, for eggs, or to combine both purposes in one small farm. Turkeys produce eggs too, but the purpose is fundamentally different. Turkeys are not chosen as a replacement for laying hens for regular table egg production. Turkeys begin laying later, and their productive period and management require a completely different approach. So if your main goal is to produce eggs regularly for your family with reasonable costs, chickens clearly have the advantage. The conclusion is simple. Chickens are more versatile. They can be layers, meat birds, or dual-purpose birds. Turkeys are primarily meat birds. But there's another important factor: housing conditions. Here, too, there's a significant difference between chickens and turkeys. Turkeys require more space, more feed, and more room simply because of their size. This becomes especially noticeable as they grow. A bird that started as a small poult can become a very large bird within a few months. Therefore, space should be calculated based on the adult bird size, not the size of the young bird. And here, chickens have another practical advantage. The same area can accommodate significantly more birds. So when space is limited, chickens are usually the more practical choice. But if you have enough space and want a large meat bird, the additional space requirements are less of a limitation. So the choice is simple. Limited space favors chickens. Enough space and a focus on a large carcass make turkeys more attractive. There is another important difference: how sensitive young birds are to housing conditions. During the first weeks, turkey poults are more sensitive to chilling and temperature errors. Dry litter, good ventilation without drafts, and clean water are equally important. In turkey poults, digestive problems, especially diarrhea, can quickly lead to dehydration and poor growth, so changes in droppings should not be ignored. Like chickens, turkeys are susceptible to infectious diseases. Therefore, for both species, good hygiene, proper stocking density, dry litter, and good ventilation are essential. Young chickens also require proper management, but under the same conditions, turkey poults generally have higher requirements during the brooding period. Therefore, temperature, ventilation, dry litter, water, and feed should be monitored especially carefully during the first weeks. There is another practical point: how much money you need to invest before getting your first product. With turkeys, this period is usually longer. They grow for longer, consume more feed, and your investment is recovered later. With meat chickens, the turnover is faster. They reach market weight earlier, allowing you to invest in the next batch soon. Therefore, with a limited budget and a need for faster returns, chickens usually have the advantage. Now let's put the main differences together. Here we are comparing standard chickens and standard turkeys, not specialized meat crosses. The difference is immediately visible. Chickens reach sexual maturity earlier and can produce considerably more eggs per year. They are also much smaller and require less feed per bird. Turkeys grow to a much larger body weight, but they take longer to mature and consume considerably more feed. So when comparing these two types of poultry, we should look not only at the final weight, but also at the time, feed consumption, and the type of product we want to obtain. And now the picture changes when we compare specialized meat birds. A broiler chicken is designed for one main purpose: to produce meat as quickly as possible. In just a few weeks, it can reach market weight, with relatively low total feed consumption per bird. A meat-type turkey follows a completely different production cycle. It takes considerably longer to reach market weight and consumes much more feed, but the final bird is also several times heavier. So these birds should not be compared simply by asking which one eats less. The real question is how much time and feed are required to produce the final amount of meat. And now we can answer the main question of our comparison. Which bird is actually the better choice for you? I think I've covered the most important points and shown you the main differences between chickens and turkeys. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. There is much more interesting content coming your way. See you in the next video.